Hello, hello. I'm Strider, your host here at Author in the Headlights, and I want to thank you for joining us today. Also, before I get sidetracked, I would like you to hit that little subscribe button in the bottom right corner. That's a little square symbol with a white triangle in it, or at the end of the show, it converts to a logo of Durham Publishing itself. But if you'll do that, we might actually get this thing to monetize someday, which my life would love. And until then, we just love to have you here. We have a really neat author, Scott Burry, Canadian, and he was actually recommended by Janet Oakley, who we had on the show a few months ago. And she said, "You've got to talk to this guy. He's great." So, Scott, you come highly recommended. Let's hope you maintain that level for our show today.
Oh, no pressure, no pressure. I need more
No
coffee.
pressure. So you do all kinds of things. Now, you don't want to be stuck in one genre, as I understand, and that's super. But you have mysteries, epic and paranormal fantasies, and thrillers, all kinds of things, right?
Yeah, yeah. So first, I just wanted to make sure I do say thank you, Janet, for the recommendation. And yeah, let's get together again soon. Yeah, I just have to me, it's all stories. And I get the ideas for stories and I want to tell them. So the first, my first fiction publication or commercial publication was a short story for children. But I had been kind of working on a novel for a long, long time, and I wanted to write a story. My kids were fairly young at the time, so I wanted to write a fantasy story with dragons. And actually, it's kind of started when I started looking around for stories that, books that they would like about dragons, and I was really dissatisfied with what was on the shelves. And so came up with the idea for The Bones of the Earth. But I also got ideas for writing mysteries, and I had an idea for, I don't know where it came from, but an idea about the Queen's son was immune to magic. So, they come from all over the place. I guess I keep getting more ideas. My problem's the opposite of writer's block.
You've got a lot of things in your head. You've got Dark Age Trilogy, which
Mhm,
is historical fantasy.
mhm.
Um, your Eastern Front trilogy, now that's a true story of Germany's invasion of Soviet Union, as I remember, World War II.
Yep.
Um, and you've got three books in that set. Hawaiian Storm series, which is a female FBI agent.
Mhm.
Wildfire in California during wildfire. Um, you've got a spicy romance. You've got action thrillers, Van and LeBrun action thrillers. You're just all over the board, which is truly, from my point of view, that's cool. That doesn't
Ah,
limit you at all.
well, I'm glad to hear that because I've heard, from professionals in the publishing business. No, no, you have to have, pick a lane. You're going to be a mystery writer or you're going to be a thriller writer and stick with that. But I just can't do that.
Well, I suppose there are norms of things that they find. Well, this works, especially if you're the publisher, they want to go down this venue, but it just doesn't require that. Now, are you self-published? Are you with a publisher or are you both?
Well, I like to call it cooperative publishing
Cooperative. Okay.
because there's a number of us, independent publishers and writers, but we collaborate on and we share duties like or functions like editing, proofreading, graphic design, and so on. So what we're producing is are books that measure up to all the professional publishing standards. I used to work in publishing. I used to work for Prentice Hall, which was a division of Simon and Schuster, and other people, worked in the business in various areas. So yeah, we know what the standards are and how to achieve them. So we don't just none of us is completely self-published because we all our books are professionally edited, all our books are professionally designed. So
And I would hope that all self-publishers do that. They get their work looked at outside, because you simply can't catch it all yourself, because you already know
Oh,
what you expect. So that's kind of what your brain sees instead of what's really there on the page.
exactly. My rule for publishing is, or for writing is, you can't proofread your own stuff. Just doesn't work.
You better read it and check
Oh,
it
yeah.
over and edit it, but then you still need that other set of eyes to look at it. Absolutely. I totally agree. So yes, and when you have a publisher, when you're outside published, they take care of a lot of that, but you still have to have a good manuscript turned over to them.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. The sort of the barrier I ran into when I first started, turning to writing fiction was no publisher wants to see you without an agent, and no agent wants to see you unless you have a publisher. And the only way to get around that is to be already published, or to be a celebrity of some kind. So that's why we get books by Justin Bieber and people like
It's
that.
true. That is true. Yeah. And I do have a set of books I haven't had published yet, because I'm looking for an agent and a publisher for them rather than through myself. I'd like to do that set too. And so I'm just kind of holding them off to the side.
Mhm.
But I do understand that. And nowadays we have the option of doing self-publishing that wasn't available so readily
Yeah,
years
exactly.
ago. And to do it well, you don't have to just say, it's an indie author and you put it off in the, in the corner somewhere,
Yeah.
because you really can do that and can do it well. So of all the genres you have, what is your most favorite, or do you have a favorite?
I don't really know of my own. It's like trying to choose your favorite child, I guess. But I
True.
kind of realized a while back that when it comes to reading, what I like is historic or magical realism. So my books I enjoy the most are like Gabriel Garcia Marquez, or Mark Halperin's Winter's Tale, books like that. And so I guess I like to think of the Bones of the Earth or the Dark Age trilogy as historical magical realism. That's a mouthful.
All right. It's a mouthful, but it works because trying to place things in genres sometimes is difficult. My books are difficult to place in a genre because they're kind of this, but they're kind of that. They're kind of,
They should be, because every writer should be looking for their own story. Otherwise, you're just repeating the same old tropes, the same old cliches.
that's true.
We don't need another James Bond. Uh, we have one. So
Or two or
we
three
don't.
or four, or
Yeah, we don't need uh, another Hobbit, because we've got that. That's taken care of. So find your own voice, tell your own story.
all right. That's good. That's actually good to hear. Now, of your story, do you have a method in which you write? Especially now, you are very genre crossing, um, but do you have a methodology that you use when you write?
Yeah, I like to, I'll have an idea for either the beginning or the end, or just sort of a concept. Then I'll try to um, outline it and do a fairly detailed outline. So beginning to end, which means as I'm doing that, I have to create characters, or define the characters, I guess would be more accurate way to put it. And what are these people like? What do they like? What do they dislike? What sets them off? What are their goals? Um, and one thing I like to do for secondary characters, I'll try to think of someone I know, and how would that person fit into this situation? What would be their reaction? And what would they do next? I had some fun with my Hawaiian Storm movie books, just putting in other writers that I've met over the years. So and they've kind of reacted with good humor when they see their own name in the story. And
I hope so.
once for one book, I even said on social media, "Hey, do you want to be a character in this book?" And a lot of people said, "Oh, yes, please." So that was fun.
Now, you've also done some spicy romance, your One Shade of Red. Now, that's a step out of a genre of, say, historical fantasy fiction. Did you
Yeah,
find that difficult to switch?
no, not at all. Yeah, so I just wanted to take the biggest selling book of the early teens, 20 teens. And I decided, I read it. It was a big deal, and I thought I didn't like the writing style at all. And I thought, okay, well, let's turn this on its head. Let's take this idea and completely flip it over um, to something else. And so, it wasn't a hard book to write. In fact, that was my one entry into National Novel Writing Month in November. So you're supposed to write 50,000 words in 30 days. And I did that. And the book ends up being more than 50,000 words. I think it's around 70 or 80,000. But, it took some discipline. So yeah, I had to have the plot worked out. Oh, that was pretty simple. Um, and you write 1,600 or 1,700 words a day, which for me wasn't a problem. The one thing I did find was that the character toward the end sort of went his own way. So it wasn't completely what I intended, but the story worked.
Okay, I have a question there about Eastern Front trilogy.
Mhm.
Um, Now that is written as a true story,
It
but
is.
did you novelize that or did you try to keep that as a true story, nonfiction type thing?
I guess I wrote it in a novel style so that it would bring the reader into the story. And it's based on the story of my father-in-law, who was a Canadian, drafted into the Soviet Red Army. So he's born in Montreal, but drafted into the Soviet Red Army in 1941. And and so I talked to him a lot about, his memories and the stories that he used to tell us. And so those are all in the book. But it still required a lot of research for things like, okay, what was the actual date of this operation? What were the Germans doing, and how long did these things take? And some of the little details, like I said, okay, well, where were you when this happened? And he was a bit vague on that, and because it had been, at that time, 60 years since he'd been there, and so memories start to get foggy.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
the number of his unit, it changed. And if you know any of the history, uh, the Red Armies changed numbers and designations and groupings over and over again, and commanders a lot. So it took a lot of research into, going to the libraries and archives, and spent a lot of time on the internet. Um, and then I did find, after he passed, and before the final part of the book was written, some of his documents from the war, which were really, really interesting. You know, uh, Documents from the United Nations, letters from Allied officers, some really fascinating stuff, which I put into the book.
That sounds like a really good set, and I have not read that set. I'm going to have to do that.
Yeah.
And that is a trilogy there. Um,
Yeah.
Now, you are, besides being an author yourself, you said you have this interconnection with other authors, and you are connected with Independent Authors International, as I understand, and best-selling reads, right?
Correct. Yeah. Janet is a member of Best Selling Reads.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In that, there's 17, 18 of us now.
So what are those, and how now Author in the Headlights is for both readers and writers.
Right.
So if I'm going to push forward here, best-selling reads, what would you say about it? How can that connect with other authors, or does it?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We do invite, it's an invitation only group. So I was invited
Okay.
years ago. And they're all writers, or we're all writers who adhere to those high publishing standards, professional design, professional editing, and so on. And they're good. They're good stories. All of them are good stories. So we have some pretty big sellers in our group, and we have some who are like me, not as big sellers.
So big seller.
Not quite up there yet, but
Yeah.
yeah, I've got a couple of people who are, uh, million seller copy sellers, so we're quite happy about that.
Yeah.
And we cooperate with in terms of promotion mostly. That's the main goal of the group. So we have a website, bestsellingreads.com. We have we do a monthly newsletter and a blog, a weekly blog. So we try to keep up and keep in touch with the readers, and we're always happy to bring more readers and more writers along with the story because there's lots of good stuff to read there.
Excellent. Bestsellingreads.com. All right. Well, maybe we'll get that Bestselling Reads onto our Durham Publishing author resources page as an outreach that people can link to. That's there. So we'll do that as well. Now, your books will be available through the Durham Publishing bookstore, where people can link to there and find wherever they're sold. Now, we're kind of running out of time. It happens. It just happens. I find that talking with writers, with authors there's so much to talk about, not just your book titles, but the how to, the where to, things that work and things that don't. And we might just have to have you back on the show again later.
That would be great.
I think the list, what do you have, 15 books or something like that? And we didn't talk about all of them. So, and as there's more coming, please let us know and we'll get those put on our book page too.
Okay, well, if I can, this is my latest title, the
Echoes.
Fourth Hawaiian Storm Mystery.
And there's 4 books of that, right? 4 books in that series.
Torn Roots, Palm Trees and Snowflakes, Dead Man Lying, and Echoes.
Echoes. All right. Well, congratulations to you on publishing Echoes. And that will be on our site, also available through DurhamPublishing.com. And because we're running out of time, I'm going to have to say goodbye for now. But I think maybe we'll end up connecting again in the future.
I'd appreciate that. That'd be great.
Thank you, Scott, for taking some time to be with us today.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
And so from me, Strider, your host here at Author in the Headlights, sponsored by DurhamandPublishing.com, we'll say thank you for now. Until next time. Sponsored by DurhamandPublishing.com.